Hello everyone, this is Eric from Play Learn Develop, and I hope you remember me and my project to take Toolbox for Creativity to Kickstarter. And I didn't publish anything from, well, my last update obviously, but it was the whole of March, and that's a big no-no because my promise was to post the evolution of the Kickstarter project so you could learn as the project evolves, and perhaps you can take this opportunity to learn, well, not to do this, not to interrupt and lose faith in your project. And that kind of happened to me a little bit. Sorry, this thing is creating an echo inside my head. So the thing that happened is, you remember this picture at the beginning, there was a big red there, and or a stop sign, and I had to stop, regroup, rethink, and that's what I did throughout March. Even though I continued working with the project Toolbox for Creativity, I had to reconsider a few things. But good news is we are back on track, and I think it's gonna be a lot more interesting from now on. As a matter of fact, I am looking for people to work with me in this project. I am looking for content manager, copywriter. I am looking for graphic designer and graphic artists. I already spoke to a person that I know today, and I shared with him the information, and hopefully, he will end up working with me. But nonetheless, as I mentioned, I'm looking for these three skills: content manager, sorry, slash copywriter in English. I am looking for as well graphic designers and graphic artists. Why? Because we need the content manager, the copywriter, to work on the Kickstarter campaign. We will also need graphics for the Kickstarter campaign, but once the campaign is successful, we will need it in order to put the art on the product, on Toolbox for Creativity, at least on the physical part of Toolbox for Creativity. Remember, Toolbox for Creativity is a learning solution, and it has three main components. One of them is the actual physical box that allows people to prototype games, and through this process learn more about whatever subject it is that they are working with. But also it has some digital elements, which are YouTube style videos that allow people to learn how to work with Toolbox for Creativity, but also how to learn from the prototyping, the creation of games. Creating a game may sound simple, but sometimes can be difficult. The purpose of Toolbox for Creativity is not to create board game designers. It is to use board game design as a tool for learning. So we give very brief tips on how to create games, but remember, this is kind of rapid prototyping, so you use the technique, and for example, we teach you about how to use art, how to use theme, the theme of the whole game. For example, you may have a medieval game, you may have dragons and stuff like this, or you may have a futuristic sort of game. So that's what the theme is, and it impacts a lot on the final product. And we also teach people how to use game mechanics quite briefly, and some elements as well. So for example, your game can be based on cards, can be used based on dice, or can be Euro type of game. And we make people familiar with some of the terminologies, again, quite briefly, quite rapidly, so they focus on what they're learning. And that's the second part. And the third part of the model that I was mentioning. So the first one is the box, the prototyping kit. The second one is the digital elements, the YouTube videos. And the third part is the learning and evaluation framework. So this was created by me. It was tested during 2020 at the University of Economics Krakow, and also with some other professionals. And now we believe we are ready to take this to market. And so here I replaced the big stop sign with the tick. We are ready to continue. Another change in the board is our target audience. So the personas, I removed the previous ones, and now what we are going to do is focus on trainers and coaches. These are people who live their profession, their professional life, their career is to develop and deliver training to corporations or to also universities. And we are going to focus on this particular group, this particular type of part of the population. And we believe they will benefit from, say, for example, using Toolbox for Creativity to enhance the engagement of their training courses. For instance, one quick example, and I experienced this in my life when I was working as a project manager, but I was also delivering training. Agile project managers, they do quite of active learning and training on their own, but on talking to a few of them, they kept saying that they were looking for a type of training that allows people to build something. And this makes sense, because when you are working with Agile, you are going through iterations and you are testing them and you are moving to the next one and presenting this to the I forget the name right now, it's not a stakeholder, the whatever it is, the person that it is approving the iterations. Sorry, I forgot this right now, but it helps a lot. Product owner, yeah, that's what it is. So the product owner is approving this, and through conversations with the Scrum Master and the Agile team, they move on to the next iteration. And it helps a lot to have a tool that allows people to see physical objects that they are building so they can move on to the next iteration. Toolbox for Creativity work perfectly in this scenario. And but it works, as I said, for different kinds of settings. For design thinking, it works as well wonderfully. And I am also working with a professional in design thinking to use Toolbox for Creativity to deliver a course, so you can see, live a professional using Toolbox for Creativity in order to explain how to learn, or well, not to explain how to learn, to teach people how to learn design thinking. And something else that happened quite recently, and I want to share with you, is I was watching a movie, I think it might have been last night, about Steve Jobs. And what I found interesting is that he had these constant arguments with the marketing team or the stakeholders, I can't remember which ones, that they didn't want to approve his technique for marketing. And they kept saying, you are not showing the product, you're not showing the product. And I am not Steve Jobs, so I need to show the product because I'm not a genius like he was. So let's do it. So this is a prototype. Again, quite literally, it's a gray box. And the idea in this particular case was that the students of the University of Economics Krakow, this is back in 2020, they received the box and they worked with the contents of the box, but they were also encouraged to put the art on the box. And I will show here some of the results actually of the prototypes, the games that they created, and some of them were quite amazing. The way they actually drew by hand the art and how they decorated the boxes, it was amazing. Also, some of the students didn't go through the trouble of decorating the boxes by hand. Instead, what they did was they took a picture of the box and then they worked with digital art and they presented that as their prototype of how they envisioned the game to be. Remember, this was during the Corona times, so a lot of the evaluation, well, actually all the evaluation was done online, and they were submitting the files electronically. So some of the students were showing us the box in a Zoom type of meeting, but some of the students, even though we had the Zoom meeting in order to evaluate the outcome and to answer questions, they submitted all the files as pictures, and then we were looking at them. We were looking at pictures of the games they created, the elements, how they related the game with the learning outcome, which in this case, the learning outcome was related to organizational behavior. But as I said, they had pictures of the box and they created the art digitally on top of the picture. and I thought that was quite ingenious. And there is a lot to learn in this type of solutions that the students were applying to a potential problem. And I say potential because working online is not a problem, but some people may perceive it as a problem. Nonetheless, the solutions the students came up with were quite brilliant, and I believe we all, as I said, can learn a little bit more about this. Remember, the students of today are tomorrow's people working in your organization. So anyway, back to showing the product. So here it is, and this is a prototype. The final product will not be cardboards, plain cardboards, so don't be alarmed. This is a prototype, and the idea is that Toolbox for Creativity, the physical part of it, which is this, the prototyping kit, you open it, and inside of it there are some smaller boxes. Again, this is the prototype. The boxes in the final products may look differently, will look differently actually, and then the boxes will have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, perhaps up to 5. So you take one of the boxes, and then with the content of the box that you are working with, I mean, obviously you start from box number 1, number 2, but imagine you are on iteration number 3. So you open box number 3, and with the content of that box, you are supposed to create a prototype of a tabletop game or a board game to express the idea that you're working with. And I mean express the idea in case, say, for example, you are on a brainstorming session, sorry, or let's say you are working with a risk identification. So in this case, the risk identification is the purpose of the workshop. And as you create versions of the game, you try to represent risks or to interpret risks through the creation of board game or a tabletop game that represents that type of risk. Imagine, for example, a card game that contains quite a lot of risks that can derail a project or a transformation in an organization. That would be the kind of games that I would expect the people at the workshop, let's call them the players, to create. Nonetheless, they can create, well, practically infinite amount of combinations of mechanics and games in order to represent how they think the risks will affect the transformation and the organization. But one element I want to show you from the box is the board game or the game board. So let me just open this one, and here we have this game board that folds in 4. Let me just fold it in 2, so it's a little bit easier to show on the screen. And the idea of this game board, as you can see, is completely white. When you are playing board games or tabletop games, they have the board games game boards have amazing art, and they're so engaging, and just looking at them gives you pleasure. But for the purpose of Toolbox for Creativity, the game board is white, and more than white, it is actually this version, nonetheless, is dry erase. So the idea is that you can use it and reuse it. Let me see here. You can see I'm trying to get rid of the light. So for whatever reason, this is your version of your game, and you do not like it, you can simply now you can simply delete this, erase it, and continue prototyping. The purpose of this is not only for the workshop and for the session that you are running, but it means that the box can be used for various sessions. I wouldn't say literally infinite because elements do degrade, but it can be used for many sessions, and some of the elements can be easily replaceable. So again, the elements on the box are reusable during the actual session, but they're also reusable for many sessions. So if you're running, say, for example, a design thinking workshop and you use it for that, and then you are using running a design thinking workshop, you can use it for that. If you want to take a couple of boxes and put them in a classroom so the students use them, that's also perfectly fine, and it means that you don't need to buy a new box every time you're running a session. Nonetheless, the box works ideally with the best, sorry, the ideal amount of people per box is 3 people. You can have 2 and you can have 4, but then you need to negotiate a little bit how the whole workshop is going to happen. What I'm saying is that if you have a workshop with 12 people, you will need 4 boxes to have 4 teams of 3 people. So, and again, if you have 11, then you need to negotiate who's going to have the team of 2, but there's no problem. It just needs to be done, and it needs to be considered when you are running the workshop. And then you finish with that workshop, you have your 4 boxes, then you can use them again in future workshops, and they don't have to be related to the same topic as the previous workshop. That's the beauty of Toolbox for Creativity, that actually sits in well with different kinds of training. By the way, these trainings can be your training, your material, your content, and you're only putting Toolbox for Creativity on top of all of this, or below your content, whatever way you want to consider it. But it kind of merges into it, and then you deliver a much more entertaining workshop. There are also some identified training sessions and workshops that can be done with Toolbox for Creativity, and we tell you how to do it. Nonetheless, the point is that Toolbox for Creativity can be used on top of your content. So you don't really need to change your content in order to use Toolbox for Creativity. Toolbox for Creativity only makes it more entertaining, more engaging, and allows people to have, if I would say this without getting people a little bit skeptic, fun during the workshop. And fun in this case means not only that they will laugh and smile and be active during the workshop, it means that all of that is going to happen, and the learning will be more effective, meaning that they will learn more, and what they learn will stay with them, with the people at the workshop, with the students, with the learners, for a longer periods of time. That is one of the many benefits of active learning, and one of the many benefits of Toolbox for Creativity. So, just to recap, not sure for how long have I been talking, but I think it's already too long. We are back on track. We are now going to produce more updates, and hopefully they will be more interesting, because we are actively working with taking Toolbox for Creativity to Kickstarter. Now it's for sure that we're going to Kickstarter. There was a point that I was considering different alternatives to crowdfunding. Now Kickstarter is our avenue. We as well have a potential date for launching, which is July. Again, I don't want to say that this will be the final date, because it may change, but that's our goal. And our market is trainers or coaches, that these are professional trainers or coaches that specialize on delivering corporate training and workshops, and they are looking for ways in order to improve their sessions. So this is our audience, and we are going to focus on this. And finally, as well, as I said, we are looking for people with skills on copywriting, content management, copywriting, graphic artists and graphic designers. So that's what we need at the moment in order to see this project through and launch hopefully in July. So thanks again for watching, and yes, next week I will also post the next video, even if it is short, even if I don't have much to say. I promise that I will keep the updates. And if you have any questions about Kickstarter, how this is working, if you have any questions about active learning, how active learning improve workshops in corporations and in educational settings such as universities and colleges, please leave a comment. I will get back to us, not immediately, but I will get back to us, that's a promise. And if you want to know more about Toolbox for Creativity, of course, write your question there and I will get back to you. So thanks a million, and yeah, I'll see you next week.